So I'm Matt Sump. I got Ryan Ramal with me here today, and he'll cover the technical part of this webinar. And I'm going to cover some sales and general items here in the beginning. So what are we going to cover today, and what else does Shopware offer? So on the Cimco side of things, we're going to first start out with the Simcoe editor, which a lot of you may know as a light version of it is included with any Mastercam license. But you can upgrade that for $250 to what they call the Pro editor, and Ryan will go over some of those features today. But really, the main benefit of the Pro editor is you can backplot NC code. And he's also going to talk about a new feature they have built into the Simcoe editor where they're starting to get into machine simulation, and it's at a much more cost-effective price point than a lot of the other true NC simulation options that are out there. Then we'll get into kind of probably the most popular on the Cimco side, which is the DNC Max, and then you can couple that with the NC base. So the DNC Max is basically a single point or multi-point management of getting programs around the shop floor, and there's a bunch of different setups that I'll cover here in a few minutes. And the NC base basically adds a database on top of the DNC Max, so you can do a lot of program searching and management and user level control, which Ryan will also cover that as well. And then the last part on the Simcoe software side we're going to cover today is getting into what they call their MDC Max, which is the machine data collection and monitoring. And then on the right-hand side of the screen there, I just have the other products that we cover that a lot of you may already know. But Mastercam obviously is what we've been doing since 1992, but we also have the ProShop shop management software now, as well as the Markforged 3D printers. If you missed that webinar last week, I don't know if we put it up on our YouTube channel yet, or we just kept it as a link to send people. But if you guys want more info on that, we have a full page on our website on shoprank.com. You just click Markforged right when you're on the home page, and there's a bunch of videos and test cases and other info to learn about that. And if you have any sales questions, you can always email sales@shoprank.com. So let's get into Simcoe a little bit here before I pass it over to Ryan. So a lot of people, when I talk to them about Simcoe, they think it needs to be, this super complex, a lot of hardware, expensive sort of solution depending on their shop size. I was in a customer the other day, he had 3 CNCs and, was asking me, well, why do I need something like Simcoe? It's going to cost me $20,000 or something like that. But, we can get as simple or as robust for a setup with the Simcoe products here. So the screenshot I have on the slide right now is, a real basic sort of setup. So you can basically get a 4-port card for your current computer and run RS-232 cables directly to the machines, but still take advantage of DNC Max or NC base and managing the programs throughout the shop and not having to run a USB stick out to the floor. And even if your CNCs are 20 feet away from you, you can still save time by getting them all hooked up and managed together. So the next slide I have is more, for maybe a larger shop or you have a larger network and basically more components going on with the system. So the nice part about Simcoe is it's essentially infinitely expandable. So I think they can support something like 10,000 CNCs on their system, which I don't even think Foxconn has that many in China. So as you can see in the screenshot here, you can have some CNCs hooked up by a switch. If some are in a different area of the shop that it's hard to access, you can have wireless solutions. There's really any sort of setup you can imagine we can accomplish with the Simcoe product. So typically anytime someone contacts us and are interested in a DNC Max, NC base, or MDC type solution, we always say that we're going to come out and do what we call a site assessment. So we want to see, what equipment you guys have, what sort of setup are you looking for, and what's your ultimate goal with the system. Do you just want to get programs back and forth? Do you want to manage programs at a multi-tiered level? Do you want guys on the floor to be able to remote request programs from a database? And then lastly, do you want to monitor what all those machines are doing? Because a lot of people, you'll ask them what their spindle uptime is, but then once we get a system in like MDC, they'll really start to see where the slowdown is throughout the process. We've optimized everything else. We got a ERP system, we have Mastercam creating perfect programs every time, but we're still not hitting our delivery time. So that's really where the MDC starts to come into play. It might not be an operator issue or something like that, but it might be more of a maintenance issue where the machines are down for whatever reason, and Ryan will get into some of those alarm codes when we get into the MDC part of the webinar. So the last part I want to talk about here before I hand it over to Ryan, and I'm going to launch a couple polls after this slide as well, but just talking about hardware solutions. So don't think you're pigeonholed into one sort of setup when you're talking about these Cimco systems. We've worked with Moxa now for a long time, and basically they offer any sort of industrial networking equipment. So from, on the left-hand side of my screen there, you got the kind of standard Moxa box where Ethernet plugs into one side and then RS-232 goes to the machine. But then there's monitoring units. They have wireless solutions. I have customers that like to buy their, basically like it's an RS-232 switch because all the machines are in a particular cell. So then you can just run one Ethernet cable to the cell and then say 6 RS-232 cables off of that to the different CNCs. Because kind of the rule of thumb there is once it gets over 50 feet is really about as long as you want to run RS-232. It will work up to about 150, but you start running room for error once RS-232 gets longer than that. And, Ethernet doesn't really have a limit in any sort of building environment for length of run. So again, that gets back to why we do the site assessment and can really find out, what would be the best solution for your shop and how to get everything hooked together. And then it all ties into really what modules and items you need on the Cimco software.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ryan Ramel here with Shopware. Just going to go over a little bit on the Cimco side of things. As Matt kind of stated previous, we're going to be kind of going over the Cimco editor that comes with the Mastercam license, along with some of the features that we can do within that light version. Then I'll also show you a little bit on the Cimco Edit Pro version that you can actually upgrade your Mastercam license for the $250, and that's going to actually give you some additional functionality for backplotting and some solid simulation such as Verify. So after that, we'll go over some machine simulation on a Haas UMC 750, and then we'll get into kind of the brunt of it of DNC Max, NC Base, and then our machine data collection, our MDC Max. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. You can see on my screen, I do have Mastercam 2019 opened up here. I do have a part file with the toolpath in here, so a lot of that's probably going to be familiar to you guys there. If you need to change around the editor in Mastercam, by default, it's going to go ahead and get posting out to the Mastercam Code Expert, but you can simply just go up to the File button in the upper left-hand corner, go down to Configuration, and then inside of the configuration itself, we can go to the Start/Exit page. On the Start/Exit page, we can take our editor, and instead of Mastercam, we can go to Simcoe, and then we can just simply green check out and say, yes, we want to keep that change. And now anytime we post out a program, that's actually going to go right into Cimco Edit. If I now go ahead and post out my toolpath, it's going to ask me where do I want to save it. That's fine. We can save it as is. And then you can see that's going to get loaded up in my Cimco editor. Again, this is the free version that comes with Mastercam. When you install Mastercam, the Cimco Edit is going to be part of it. All you need to have for licensing is your Mastercam dongle to be plugged in, and you'll be able to open up that editor no problems. Inside of here, there are going to be some functionalities. Again, you can edit your programs as needed. Hopefully, you're not doing too much editing, but if you are, get in touch with our post department. However, we can go into different features as far as NC functions or file compare, or possibly even sending to a machine. On the NC functions, we have some things as far as block numbering. We can renumber or we can remove any of those blocks. So any of those sequence numbers, again, I can take right out of my program, or we can renumber them, add those back in. We can insert in any block skips, remove any spaces or empty lines, maybe even remove any comments, that we may not want to be in there. Do a handful of things with the standard editor. Getting into some file compare, let me actually open up a couple files here that we can do a file compare against. And with this one, I just have some slight changes in between the two files. Easy way to check that out is to go into my file compare, and we can say compare with window, and that's going to compare my two files together here with my window, and I can actually see the differences highlighted. With this, we can actually go to the next differences and step through. So on any lengthy programs, I can go ahead and check that out. We also have different features in here for syncing left or right. So anything that's in my right window, I can actually sync to my left window and vice versa. So that's kind of a nice feature there that would allow me to check out some differences of files depending on machine posts or any changes you made in the program. So that's a quick overview as far as the Simcoe Edit standard, the light version that comes with Mastercam. Now we kind of talked a little bit about the full version of the Simcoe Edit. And again, this is the upgrade that you could potentially purchase there. The Simcoe Edit Pro is going to have a lot of the same features as far as NC functions. We do get a little bit more with toolpath statistics, macro programming, maybe adjusting some feed and simple math functions. But one of the main ones here is going to be my backplot and simulation. If I actually went to this backplot tab, I can go ahead and go to my backplot window. And this is actually reading right off of the G code itself. And we can see what that toolpath is going to look like. You can see in this one in Mastercam, I just programmed up a dynamic mill toolpath as a pocket. And then with that, I left some stock on my walls. If we zoom in here, you can see kind of that 10th difference between my walls. And then, of course, the finish contour going around. If you'd like, you can actually bring that through, and we can see our tool and our holder being defined, and actually go in and cutting out that particular feature. Now, if you wanted to kind of take that a step further, we can actually go into a solid animation, and this is kind of like a Mastercam Verify. All I'm going to do is set up my stock, so I'm going to go ahead and define that for me here. We can say OK. I already have my tool loaded up, but we are able to save or load tools into the library, and then of course we can bring that through again. Again, seeing a solid animation of what is going on with my part. Now again, this is reading off of the G code itself. So any changes I would make to the G code, we would go ahead and see that here in the simulation. Otherwise, there are a few other things here. I can actually go into what we call bookmarks. So on any long programs, if there are any particular places that you want to check it out, you can actually add in these different bookmarks. We can go to these different bookmarks that I added in here. Maybe one's going to be on a tool change. The next one's maybe when I get down into my part itself and start engaging the tool, and anywhere throughout the program. Again, we can add in these bookmarks for in ease of use in order to get in there and check that out. And then lastly, inside of the editor itself, we do have simple tasks such as find and replace. You can even do a multi-line, so anything, if you had to do multiple lines as far as find and replace, of course, we do support that as well. So that's a little bit with the Cimco Edit Pro version here on some of the additional functionality.
Peter had a question, and I'm sending a text version of it right now, but what's the advantage of using Simcoe's backplot versus Mastercam's backplot? So anytime you're backplotting or verifying within a CAM system, whether it's Mastercam or anything else, you're backplotting what's called the NCI code, is what Mastercam calls it. Other softwares may call it cut location data, a CL file. There's all different kinds of names for it. But that's before it's being ran through the post processor. So when you backplot in Simcoe, you're actually backplotting the G code. So then you can essentially make sure that what you're seeing in Mastercam is translating exactly to what you're seeing in the G code. So hope that answers the question.
Thanks for that, Matt. Any other questions, please feel free to write in and ask those, of course. Kind of moving on from the Cimco Edit side of things, one of the most recent enhances to the Cimco is going to be the machine simulation. So this one that we're going to do right now is going to be for the Haas UMC 750. So I'm going to go ahead and drag in a part file here. And on my backplot window, we have a machine simulation tab. Machine simulation is a purchasable option. So if you do have any Haas UMC 750s or any other machines you'd like simulation on, you can certainly send us an email and see if we do support those machines. Now with this, I do load up everything as far as my head and my table machine along with the actual housing of the machine. All I need to do is add in my fixture and my workpiece. So I can go ahead and add those STL files in. With this, to get a little bit better of a view, I'm actually going to minimize the visibility for the housing, just because really all we care about is going to be the trunnion and the head of the machine. Now again, with this, all we would have to do to simulate it is go ahead and start playing that through. We can see that our head and our table is going to be moving here. As it's moving, I'm going to zoom in, and we can actually see everything tilting and doing its toolpath. Again, this is reading right off of the G code itself. And so any limits, collisions, anything like that would in fact be reported out to us. We can also have the machine simulation stop on those collisions, and that way we can see where it's at. So again, the machine simulation, that's going to be supported for the Haas UMC 750s for right now, but we are working on getting other FANUC controllers and other types of machines supported here in the near future. Again, the machine simulation in Simcoe is going to vary from the Mastercam machine simulation, just because this time we're actually reading right off of the G code, similar to the backplot like Matt was explaining earlier, versus the NCI code of Mastercam. So that's a little bit on the machine simulation itself. I'm going to go ahead and close out of that, and we can actually get into the DNC Max and the NC base side of things. DNC Max is going to be the program that is really sending and receiving part files back and forth to and from the controller. You can see this is my DNC Max client window here, and just for example purposes, I have a machine called CNC Controller and then a machine called my DNC server. So the DNC server is actually going to be the server itself. That would be server or the computer itself at your place of business. And then, of course, our CNC controller is going to be the actual machine itself. Now, with this, we have different functionalities with the DNC Max where I can send or receive files. We can also hook it up to do what we call a remote request. And the remote request program would actually allow me to go in and send out a dummy program here to the controller itself. So as you can see, it's just going to be a short little program. This program is typically always stored on the CNC controller. And if I actually go ahead and modify it to say, I want S1015, that's going to be the program that's actually stored in my database itself. And so if I went and sent out that 7777 program, you can see we have S1015. I can go ahead and say OK. That is now going to request that program. You can see that the server receives it in. However, because the server has the program locked, we're actually going to be sending back a program that tells me it cannot send it out. And that way the operator isn't on the machine just waiting for something to happen. It does get data in it, but it's telling you what is exactly wrong. So because this program is in fact locked, let's go ahead and fix that. We can open up our editor again. Part of our editor is going to be our database. And so if I went into the Explorer, we can go ahead and put in a handful of different users in here. With that, each user can also have permissions associated to it, whether they're going to be an administrator such as IT or a supervisor, or if they're just going to be an operator. Each of those different types of groups, we can add in different user permissions, whether they can edit programs, send and receive programs, add programs to the database, delete out programs from the database. So there's a handful of different permissions that we can go in and put in there for these people. If I go ahead and look for my program S1015, I can see that the program is in fact locked. So in our case, I can go ahead and unlock that. I am sure that I want to do it. And so now, if I actually sent out the program again through DNC Max, you're going to see that the server does in fact receive that. It's now going to queue it up, and it's going to send out this machine program. So if I actually wanted to go in and look at that file, you can see, okay, here it is itself. This is the file that we received on the controller. Now the editor has a handful of different abilities. It does have the ability to open up Mazatrol files. So if anyone does sending and receiving with Mazax and you might use Mazatrol, you can go ahead and open up and view those files. Again, this is just a view only. However, sometimes it might be hard to see exactly what is in your Mazatrol file. And so we'd be able to at least check it out and know what we may need to change on the machine itself. So again, any Mazatrol viewing of milling and turning is in fact supported within here. The other thing too is we have a handful of different ways we can search for programs. So we can search it by program or drawing numbers, description, rev levels, by machine groups. So if there's multiple machines that can share the same program, we can put those all in a group, and that way we can see all of them here together. Again, everything we do gets documented in here, so we can see different versions of the program between 1, 2, and 3. We can go in and file compare against that, or we can back up or restore a latest one. Again, we can do a compare with the latest backup and see maybe some differences. This one here, we just had our backup versus the one that's active. You can see I just added in a couple comments. However, it does in fact show those particular things within the software. That way we can make sure we're always working on the latest revision of that program. Some other things you can do with it too is our customers will typically put in maybe some tool lists or setup sheets, or maybe some pictures, maybe pictures of the setup or the tools that we're actually using. Again, with that, we can customize this menu to the left-hand side. So if there is any particular holders, let's say, we could put in a search tag for holders, and as long as we can extract that information from your G code, we'd be able to do a search off of that. The other thing too is if we were to send back programs to the machine, and I sent, if I sent that program we just have in here back to the machine, Simcoe is going to go ahead and as an option put that into the queue, and that way it's going to be awaiting approval. So if the operator on the machine sent the program back out, instead of it backing up and overriding that main program, typically we'll place programs into the queue, and that way someone of authority can go in, they can file compare against it, see if they're good changes or bad changes, and then potentially accept or reject that program from being my main one. Again, we can compare it with possibly the imported file, or we can just do an accept or the reject of that particular program. So that's a little bit on the database itself. Another important piece, though, and kind of the piece a lot of people like to see now, is the machine data collection. So the machine data collection is going to be our MDC Max. With this, we have a handful of different things we can display here. This one that we're showing right now is our live screen. Right now I can see that all three of my machines are in fact stopped, but if I were to put my machine as active, you can see my VMC2 is going to light up green. A lot of customers will go ahead and put this on a big screen in the shop, and that way everyone on the floor can see the status of the machines from kind of a top level view. They can see if it's in cycle, if it's stopped, if it's alarmed out, how long it's been stopped for. We can see all of that particular data here within the software. If we wanted to put in a feed hold, so on the machine, if the operator actually says feed hold, we can typically gather that data, and you can see that we are in fact feed holding. We're going to do a little bit of a flashing, showing that we are in fact feed holding. Kind of from a top level overview here, though, we can see what the machine is, what part number we're working on, what work order we have loaded up on the machine, what's the current cycle time for that, how many parts we have actually produced, and then of course the utilization of the machine itself for the day. All these fields can be customized, so if there is anything that you would like to be displayed up front and center, such as maybe stop time or program number, those can all be adjusted, moved in, taken out, or modified to your liking. A lot of the protocols, such as the FANUC Focus, MT Connect, or the Haas MNet, they will actually be feeding Cimco this data. So if the machine actually stops, you're going to see that we're going to be putting it into a red state. If I were to actually put into an alarm state, you're going to see that our alarm is going to come up, possibly tell us what the alarm message is, and then go ahead and notify us that way.
And Ryan, one thing I saw at IMTS is they're doing an alternate view of this screen, right? Where it's basically you can map it out like your shop floor is, and then have the CNCs as like little icons.
Correct.
If you have a really involved list, so, instead of a list of 50 machines, say, if you have a big shop, you can see, okay, Haas number 2 way in the back left corner is the one alarming.
Correct, yeah. So we have a shop floor view, and that would actually allow you to draw up what your shop floor is going to look like and picture yourself from the ceiling looking down at your machines. you're going to be able to see the statuses offhand, if it's green, if it's red, you know, is it flashing. If we hover over it, then of course we can get all that data that we're actually collecting here within. So that is a different view that we can go ahead and see. That's also going to be through the web client itself, and I have another dashboard I'll show you on the web client. There are some things that we typically want the operators to type in, possibly reason codes on why the machine isn't running. So if I go ahead and put a part complete, you're going to see that we're going to produce 3 parts here, and we're done with our cycle. You're going to see that our stop timer starts counting again. And this is the time that the operator could possibly go into their operator screen and maybe report some downtime reasons. So some downtime reasons might be, okay, you know, it's a programming issue, or is it a planned or unplanned maintenance? So these are the different buckets that we can put things in. And that way, when we run our report, we can actually see, is it always tooling issues? Is it material issues? And that way you can adjust for that and take appropriate steps in order to fix those issues. So again, this is different reasons on why the machine is stopped. And the operator can typically put in those values. If they do put in those values, that would allow us to generate in different reports here. So some different reports that we can generate out would be off of each machine. What does our productivity summary look like for the day? You can see on HMC 204, 56% of the day was production. About 7% of the day was setting up. 31% of the day, though, the machine was sitting idle. And then, of course, we have planned and unplanned downtime. So again, all these buckets are customizable. So if you want to see a tooling issue, we can actually expand on that and ask, what about the tooling issue, and put them into, again, different categories there. Other things, too, would be a machine timeline. So throughout the day or the week, we can actually see through the different shifts what state the machine is in. Anything green, of course, is good. That means we're within cycle. Our spindle's running, we're making shifts, and we're making money. However, anything you know, black, or the machine turned off, you know, offline, isn't good, of course. You know, and any other ones for no work or stopped, of course, is telling me that the machine isn't running. Again, typically a lot of those can be put in by operator screens, so they can go ahead and log into the different jobs, report downtime, and different reasons there. Another one here too is going to be our web client. So if you're not accessible to a computer, you can actually go on your smartphone, tablet, anything, any device that is connected up to your network, and go to the web client, so we can actually see, again, a top level overview. I don't have a screenshot of our shop floor view, but if you're interested in that, I can certainly share with that later on. But again, this is going to be a different way on how I can actually monitor all these machines and the data that we're getting collected from that. And of course, lastly, another example of a graph here would be our different targets. You can see throughout the days of the month for this VMC 70 throughout August to September, throughout every day of the month here, we can see we're usually averaging between the 30 and the 40 mark. However, the last day of the month, we must have had to pump out parts to make delivery dates. And so, of course, that exceeded our targets, our goals here. So again, these are all different graphs and charts and reports that we can generate out to see how our shop is doing and make the appropriate changes at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over back to Matt here, have him flip over to his screen. If there is any other questions, please feel free to let us know here in the webinar. I know we're ending a couple minutes early here. However, if there's any questions, please feel free to let us know here, or send us an email at either sales@shopwinc.com or tech@shopwinc.com. We'd be happy to get those answered. So let me kick it over to Matt, and I'll give you a few final things.
Thanks, Ryan. So if anyone does have any questions as we're wrapping up the webinar, feel free to ask. Peter, we'll get you one of the samples over for that, the machine floor view. It's certainly pretty cool, kind of the wave of the future sort of view. And like Ryan was talking about, really any of the Cimco products besides Simcoe Edit can run in a web client. So, you can have a tablet out on the floor just on your smartphone and be able to see status. And even on the DNC Max side, I could pick on a machine and, tell it to run a different program if I really wanted to. But you could also have that set up sort of for that, like the operator level. As that one screenshot you guys saw, even with a machine that's smart with, say, the MT Connect, well, if it's down, and it's not throwing, necessarily an alarm code. That's where you still need to have, employee training essentially, so they know to enter in whatever data that you want to track. And like what Ryan was saying there, you can customize all those different options they have. And talking with the Cimco people and just from experience, you basically want to keep that simple at first and start gathering the data that's critical. Is the machine running or not, and maybe a couple possible error codes. But as you get people in the groove and using the system and making it part of their daily workflow, that's when you can start expanding those options and essentially get more data out of the system. Because one of the examples I was looking into was a shop was seeing a drastic reduction in productivity in the night shift, and they couldn't figure out why. And they installed video systems and all kinds of stuff, and they still couldn't figure it out. Well, they finally got the MDC system, and it turned out the operator in the night shift was doubling the feed rates, thinking he could cut stuff faster. Well, it turns out, the programmer had the speeds and feeds optimal for the machine and the tool they were using, and this operator was burning through tools at twice the rate, and thus having to stop the machine to change out tooling and, spending more on tooling in general. So that's just, a small example of the type of data you can provide. And I know a lot of people on the floor might see it as a big brother sort of thing, but really the mindset is if we're more productive and efficient, that's only going to help the entire shop. If the business makes more money, then that's just better for everybody. So that's really the end goal with anything like this is, everyone's trying to go lean and optimize everything they can. And it's just another piece of that puzzle. And really, as you can see the 4 products we carry now, we're trying to, have technology solutions throughout that process, from the time that you guys get an order or trying to get an order through getting parts out the door.